ErikaApproved crew, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are diving into a Pat Mcgrath dupe. That's right, somebody duped Pat Mcgrath. Who in the world would go out of their way to dupe a Pat Mcgrath palette and put themselves out there like that? You guessed it, Bad Habit. So if that's something you're interested in watching, you're in the right place. We're about to get into it.
I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf.
Alright guys, so I am going to save you the backstory on Bad Habit. I feel like we have done so much stuff on Bad Habit Beauty on this particular channel that by now, if you don't know, my goodness, go back and watch just a few videos and you'll get my personal take on Bad Habit Beauty, what they do, and how they kind of shape their brand. Now, if you guys haven't watched the review that I did on the Pat Mcgrath palette, I will definitely link that up here. If you haven't watched it, I would recommend that you watch that before you watch this one, because in this one I'm not going to be doing a side-by-side comparison, simply because the only one that I have access to is the Sublime palette, which is the second one in the Pat Mcgrath series, and this is a dupe of the first one, and I'm not going to buy a $125 palette so that we can have a side-by-side. Just saying. However, if you want to refresh yourself on what I feel about the $125 Pat Mcgrath palette, then feel free to go watch that video and just get caught up. It'll also give you some swatches of the formula so that you can have them nice and fresh in your mind before you look at the swatches on this particular formula. Now, I will kind of give you a recap on what I feel about Pat Mcgrath. First of all, she is a legend. She is stunning. She dominates when it comes to makeup application in the industry. Some of her duochromes, the shift in them is pure genius. I don't know how she works some of her formulas. Others I don't like. There are some that I don't think are blendable. There are some that I feel like are very dry, and there are some that I feel like don't have the user-friendly aspects that they probably should have, especially for $125. Another problem that I've always had with the Pat Mcgrath palettes is that they're put together in such a weird, eclectic, artistic kind of way that it makes the palette not a everyday grab. It's only a palette that you would grab if you're going out for the night, or unless that is your like everyday look, then it may be something that you wear every day. But for me personally, they are not palettes that I would reach for on at least on a regular basis enough to justify spending $125 on a palette. So that's kind of the way that I felt about the Pat Mcgrath palette that I reviewed here on this channel. Now, Bad Habit has introduced, you know what, let's back up for a minute and talk about Bad Habit. Here lately, they've really stepped up their game. When it comes to marketing campaigns and PR, they're actually putting out like trailers for their different kind of launches that they're having. I'll show you guys some footage here. They have this new trailer about the whole Luxe series that Bad Habit Beauty is launching. The first thing in the Luxe series is the Cult series, which is an eyeshadow series, and in the Cult series, the first palette that they've launched in the Cult series is called the Mystics. So I have a feeling the Cult series is probably going to be a series of 3 palettes, just like the Pat Mcgrath series was a series of 3 palettes, and the first one in this series again is called Mystics, and it is the dupe for the first Pat Mcgrath palette. Now, I love the PR for this particular campaign. I love the way they did it. I think it's really cool. I love the aesthetic. I love that the outside of the palette says Cult on it, and it's like ripped through here with the Mystics kind of busting through. I think that's really, really neat. This palette is heavy. I feel like this is the heaviest palette that I've ever gotten from Bad Habit, and this is definitely by far the largest pan size that I've ever seen from Bad Habit. Now on the back of this, you'll notice that it has all of the shades here of all of the different colors, which I really like. It has the cruelty-free bunny down here, and then of course all of their social media stuff here. But this is a very soft matte feeling, and I think this is very luxe, and it's very heavy. So it feels like it is something different from Bad Habit. This feels like it belongs in a luxe series. So one of the issues that a lot of people had with this particular launch is that this palette cost $24. And I think the reason why that was kind of a pain point for a lot of people is because over the last year or so, as Bad Habit has become more popular and more people are realizing that their formula is genuinely superb, they've probably made a lot of money. And in the beginning, their palettes were like $10 palettes, and they were stunning. One of the first palettes they ever released was a dupe for the Modern Renaissance palette, and it was stunning. Then the palettes went up to $12. More recently, they've gone up to $16, and people were starting to say, okay, the whole reason why we give you guys our money is because you guys are keeping it really at a low price point, but you're offering us really expensive palettes at a really affordable price point. So just don't get crazy. I think a lot of people were worried about that. And then they came out with a palette that was $24. So I think a lot of people, it was like their tipping point, and they were just like, oh, here we go. Now they're just going to jack it up, and they're going to be putting out $30, $50 palettes like everybody else. But here's the thing. Bad Habit actually did come out and say, we came out with a brand new formula for the Luxe series. And I think that's why the Luxe series has been set aside as something special, because this is a different formula. This is a different ingredients. This is more luxe packaging. So I think it's just a little more expensive to produce. And at the end of the day, if they pull off a good dupe for Pat McGrath, you're saving $100 because this is only a $24 palette. Now, when it came to reformulating their original formula, they actually put out a statement about that too, along with footage, and I'll show that for you guys here. They put out footage saying this was a new formula. They really invested a lot of money in their public relations campaign, making sure that we as consumers knew that they weren't just jacking up the price to make a profit. They wanted to make sure that they put something out there to us that said, hey, we want you guys to understand that the increase in price point here is because there was a change in the formula for the Luxe series. Now, I personally was worried, okay, that this was going to be the price point like Evermore. Now we're going to be, the new bar is going to be set at $24, and I was really worried about that. But then they released another statement right behind this one that they were coming out with another palette. They're just cranking them out, I tell you. The next one is called Divine, and this is a dupe for the Natasha Denona Star palette, which is a palette that I own. So I was really excited to see this one come out. And it's 18 shadows, and the price point on it is $16. So I think they sent the message that this is part of a Luxe series that has a different formulation. It's not in that $16, $12 kind of category, that this is something different, which is why that price point is a little higher. So now that I've seen that they have another new palette coming out, it's at the normal $16 price point, I feel a little bit better about this one being at the $24 price point. So let's get into this particular palette. Now, when we get into this palette, I am going to talk a lot about this palette in comparison to the Pat McGrath palette. There were several colors in the Pat McGrath palettes that I found did not blend well. A lot of her mattes just don't blend well. If you guys have never seen that Pat McGrath video of the review that I did, definitely go back and check it out, because I really show you how I had a very difficult time blending the blacks that Pat McGrath puts in her palettes. Even though the name of the black in my particular palette is called Extreme Black, it's not a very dark black at all. The mattes are very difficult to blend. Her duochromes are freaking brilliant. The shift in those duochromes is stunning, particularly the green one in the second Mothership palette that I have access to. Now, in the first one, there was a blue in there, which is the blue that this one is duping, and it's actually not a duochrome. It doesn't really have a shift to it. It's just like a really pretty blue, but it is very dry. So on one hand, I really want Bad Habit to do a great job duping Pat McGrath, but on the other hand, I kind of want him to make it a little bit better and maybe a little more wearable, I guess would be a good way to put it. The Pat Mcgrath palettes really are like a collector's item. I feel like the packaging is superb. You get a beveled mirror on the inside, for crying out loud. It is like a work of art. Even the symbology that's on there that represents Pat Mcgrath Labs and what she stands for, the little gold squares that have all of that detailed etching in it. Like, it's a piece. It's a collector's piece that if you have an appreciation for Pat Mcgrath and her artistry in the makeup industry, you want a piece of that. I wanted a piece of that. I mean, it's just, she's a legend. It's iconic. So even though some of the shadows in there don't necessarily work for me, it doesn't really even matter, like, with the scope of who Pat Mcgrath is. But, you know, just being honest, because I've always said I would be honest with you guys, it's just some of the pans really aren't the best formula that I've ever had. And that review was hard for me because I really wanted to be able to get on there and just say, yes, this is 100% worth the $125. Everybody needs to put this in the collection. And it just didn't turn out that way. So I'm hoping that this doesn't go the same way, even though I'm kind of expecting it to, because it's a dupe of Pat Mcgrath, so it would make sense that it would. But sometimes bad habit can take things that aren't necessarily the best and turn them into something that's a lot more wearable. And I'm hoping that's the case here. So without further ado, let's get into the swatches. Alright guys, so here is just a look at the palette itself. Now, I have been using this for a little while, so excuse the fact that it's kind of messy and beat up a little bit, but here is a look at the inside before we get into some swatches. Now, I am going to swatch the mattes first. So we're going to go into Vision first, which is just a beautiful transition color. It's that perfect transition color tone. I love the fact that it is as opaque as it is, and I really, really like that one. Next, we have Resurrection, which is just a little bit of a darker brown, and again, just a very smooth, buttery, creamy, opaque formula. I really like the tone of that one. And then, of course, we have Pagan, which is the black in this particular palette, and it is black. Unlike the Pat Mcgrath palette, this one is actually a really good opaque black. So here are the mattes. This is a little bit of different lighting just so you can see the three mattes together in this particular palette. And yeah, I really liked how all three of these swatched. I think all three of them are a beautiful formula. All right, so next we're going to go into kind of the satin slash shimmers in this particular palette. We're going to start with Eternal, which is just a beautiful highlight, kind of a very standard highlighty tone. It has like that kind of icy highlightery look to it with a beautiful shimmer. It is really, really pretty on the eye. Next, we're going to go into Altered State. And this is just a very beautiful brown satin type of color. This looks gorgeous on the lid. It's really pretty, and for a satin, it is very opaque. And I love how they look a little matte until you shift them. And then you kind of really see that satiny kind of sparkle in there. And this brown is beautiful on the lid. And next we have Essence, which is actually a very unique kind of color. It's this purpley gray kind of color, and I love this color as well. I think it looks beautiful. Again, we have that it almost looks matte until you kind of shift it, and then you really see that kind of satin shimmer to it. But overall, I love these three colors. I think they actually feel really good. They feel very creamy. They're very opaque, and I think they are beautiful. I love these three colors, and I think they're actually quite similar. All right, now these are considered baked powders, just like the Pat Mcgrath formula, so these are going to be very different. Now this is considered just a foiled metallic, and this is called Absolution. And number one, the consistency of this is gorgeous. When you put it on, it doesn't fly everywhere like some other palettes, and it is so shiny and so pretty. Next, we're going to do the blue, which is Karma. This is not dry like the Pat Mcgrath palette feels very dry. This is very buttery, very opaque, and I love the sparkle that both of these colors have. So again, you can kind of see from the side, they don't look overwhelmingly sparkly, but when you pull it just out of focus a little bit, you can see that sparkle there, and it's beautiful. And that blue does have a very dark kind of black base to it, which makes for a very striking effect on the eye as well. Now we're going to get into what's considered toppers. So in the Pat McGrath formula, this was a very unique topper because it looked nude from, you know, one angle, and then you saw the peachy pink shift when you kind of shift it, and this is amazing that they pulled this off. So you see the nudeness of the topper there, which will allow a base color underneath it to shine through, and then you see that pink to gold shift, which is amazing. I can't believe that Bad Habit has created this particular formula, and I think they did it very well. It is a very well made formula, and I was slightly impressed. And this is in different lighting, so again, you have that nude kind of look, which will allow a base color to shine through, and then you have that pink to gold shift, and I think it's stunning. And I'll show you guys what this looks like on top of an actual color so you can see what that looks like. But yeah, amazing, amazing. All right, and then we have Illuminate, which is more of just an iridescent topper. So this is just going to make anything that you put on top of it have this kind of blue, pretty iridescent sheen to it, and that's pretty consistent with what that color was in the Pat McGrath palette. So yeah, again, just a really pretty sparkly topper with that really pretty kind of bluey, purpley iridescence to it. And yeah, I think this one was pretty consistent with the Pat McGrath one as well. So as an iridescent topper, it is very pretty. It's kind of pinky purpley from the side, and then you see kind of that blue shift. All right, now we have some regular matte shadows here. We have a teal and a brown, and I'll show you what these toppers kind of look like on top. So we'll go in with this one first. This is Transcend, and this is the one that has that nude kind of base to it, and then it has that really pretty shift. So when you look at it from the side, you really just see that brown. You see the shadow is able to come through, but then when you shift it, you really kind of see that shift and that sparkle, which is stunning. You see that kind of pink tone, and then you see the gold tone, and then from a certain angle, all you see is the brown. So yeah, with this particular formula, I think they pulled it off. And then with this, it's just turning this kind of teal into a more iridescent type of a shadow. So you'll notice when this gets applied, it just really turns it into a very beautiful iridescent kind of foiled shadow, and it would have that effect on anything that you put it on top of. So if you have a beautiful matte that's your favorite matte, you can put that on top of it and turn it into like a very pretty metallic almost, but this will have a specifically iridescent shine to it. So again, from the side, look at that brown. It just is a beautiful brown, and then when you shift it, you just see that beautiful color. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's really neat, and I think it's great that Bad Habit did it. So this is the whole palette all together, just so that you guys can kind of see it in one look. Overall, I think Bad Habit did a great job of making these colors a little more approachable, maybe not as intimidating, and in some instances, I think they actually improved the formula a little bit. I know it's crazy to say that, but the black is beautiful, and it's actually black. Those mattes are stunning. The toppers are beautiful, and the satins, they feel better.
So exactly what I wanted to happen is exactly what happened. I feel like Bad Habit took a very kind of eclectic, really artsy palette and turned it into a palette that's more wearable, that I think people could actually reach for on a daily basis. And I really like it, you guys. I think I know it's like blasphemy to get on here and say that I like this $24 palette more than I like a Pat McGrath palette. But you guys, okay, so it's just more wearable. That's all. It's not about like the legend that is Pat McGrath, and the component itself is just a work of art when it comes to Pat McGrath. This is not that. There's no way that Bad Habit could even attempt to replicate that. But as far as the product, the shadows that are inside, I think I like this one better. Oh, and I hate to say that, but let me tell you why. So number one, I don't reach for the Pat McGrath palette on a daily basis because it is kind of that, maybe if you're going out somewhere special, or if you're doing something on film where you want a really cool like look. It's just not something that you want to wear to go to the office every day. So I don't reach for it every day. And when you make a $125 investment, you want to be able to use it a lot, and I just don't. I have honestly reached for this palette daily since it got here for one reason and one reason only, and that is this color right here, Vision. This is probably one of the best transition colors that I have tried in a hot minute because these are so incredibly blendable. And when I say they're incredibly blendable, I mean that the matte formula, these three mattes right here, I want like a palette of just this formula, like all mattes, because this formula is spectacular. And these mattes are stunning when it comes to blending and working with them on the eye. And this is such a good transition color because everything that you put on top of it blends beautifully because this is the base. So I have reached for this, just for this transition color, like a bazillion times. I've also reached for it because this color right here, Eternal, makes a beautiful highlighter, you guys. It is stunning, and I know you guys probably aren't going to be able to tell here, but it is, as a highlighter, you guys, oh my god, look at that. So I have actually reached for this a couple of times just to lightly put here and give myself like a really pretty glow. I love this, and I love this like in the inner corner or just really slightly up here underneath the brow bone, but it makes a beautiful inner corner highlight, and I love that. This black is a great pitch black. I've used this to darken up an outer V, and I like Essence because it's that really pretty like taupey gray, and that looks beautiful on the lid as just like a lid color straight across the lid with other colors in the crease. So the one thing I haven't done is I haven't reached for this to create a full look out of it, but there are components in this that I have been excited for and that I feel like I have reached for quite often. So I can tell you that I've used this 100 times more than I've used my Pat McGrath palette. So you guys, I think I don't want to say they duped it and it's perfect because it's not. It's very different than the Pat McGrath palette, but I really, really like it, and it's absolutely Erica approved. Alright guys, so that is it. I hope you enjoyed this review of the new Luxe series by Bad Habit, the Cult series, and the first one in the Cult series, the Mystics. So I hope you guys really enjoyed it. Listen, we are going to be doing the Divine palette when it comes out because I have the Natasha Denona Star palette, so I can't wait to do some side-by-sides in that video and maybe do some Guess the Dupes. I know a lot of you guys really like that when we do that, so I look forward to that. When the second one in this series comes out, we'll actually do a side-by-side comparison of this one and the Pat McGrath, but I think you guys are going to find that they're very different. And I really like the Bad Habit version. So if you have always wanted to own a Pat McGrath palette and you just don't have the $125 to go buy it, get the Bad Habit version. It's much more wearable, and I think you'll really like it. All right, guys, as always, I hope everybody is very happy and very healthy. Don't forget we have the Norvina contest going on this week. We have from now all the way until the 30th for you guys to enter to win the Norvina palette. I think what we're also going to do is probably include this palette as well. Right before we do the giveaway at the end of the month, I will put on my Instagram when we're going to do kind of a box review review because I'm kind of adding things into the Norvina palette box. So by the time we actually give it away, it's probably going to have a couple of things in it. So we'll go over everything that's in the box in a future video before we actually do the giveaway. But anyway, go ahead and get yourself entered. Go back to the Norvina review. Make sure you like the video. Put in the comments a way to reach you in the event that you are selected as the winner, and make sure you are a subscriber. All right, guys, that is it. If you are new here, welcome. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and the notification bell on your way out. And I hope everybody's very happy and very healthy, and I will see you guys in the next one. Mwah.